Well, the big story you surely know by now, Gaddafi killed. It is a busy Thursday here on the DR Show. I am Dylan Radigan, 4 p.m. in New York, 10 p.m. right now in Libya, where they are going to bed tonight for the first time in 42 years without the dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Indeed, his reign of terror is over. The Libyan dictator terrorizing both his own citizens and the world for more than 4 decades. He trailed only Osama bin Laden in killing the most Americans in terror attacks, and Gaddafi's death being called one of the most significant victories to date in the Arab Spring.
The dark shadow of tyranny has been lifted, and with this enormous promise, the Libyan people now have a great responsibility to build an inclusive and tolerant and democratic Libya that stands as the ultimate rebuke to Gaddafi's dictatorship.
And the details coming together slowly. Here's the gist of what we understand at this hour. Early this morning, revolutionary forces, led by exactly who we don't know, captured Gaddafi's hometown of Sirte. This was the last of the pro-Gaddafi strongholds in the ongoing civil war. As he tried to flee, NATO airstrikes and U.S. drones hit Gaddafi's convoy. That much the U.S. has confirmed. Gaddafi, however, apparently survived the hit and was later found inside this drainage ditch. You may have seen this picture today. He was arrested from inside the ditch and then died while in custody. Now, video of his final moments seems to back up the claim. Some say Gaddafi died from injuries sustained in the original airstrike. Others say he was subsequently executed after they arrested him. Regardless, the transitional government now has custody of Gaddafi's body in Misrata, celebrations breaking out almost immediately in Tripoli and across Libya.
We met in this beautiful moment right now that I thought a dream just came true.
We killed that bastard! We killed everyone like the Gaddafi!
All the world is suffering because he's doing because of his done of terrorist operations, and now we are happy.
Now comes the not-so-easy task of building a new country. 3 now we have seen go to this transitional state. But first, of course, the rebels have to stop being rebels, easier said than done frequently, and start acting like a government, which we all know is easier said than done. It won't be easy. After 8 months of continuous fighting, there are multiple armed groups throughout Libya who are certain to demand a significant stake in whatever the new government is. It's something Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is raising a red flag over.
They have to try to unify the country, unify all the militias under a unitary command. They have to disarm a lot of people who have acquired the thousands of weapons that Gaddafi had stockpiled.
Well, there's a lot of implications to consider moving forward. There's a lack of structure in Libya. There's the possibility of revenge killings in any nation coming through this level of trauma, plus what the impact of the death itself will have on the wider Arab Spring. Again, all of these things happen not in a vacuum, but in the context of, let's say, Syria. So not to mention the Obama White House, which has its own reaction. We'll get to all of that during this special hour of the program. Up first, however, NBC News foreign correspondent Ayman Mohyeddin, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, and from the Center for Advanced Studies, and live from Misrata, NBC's Adrian Mong. Adrian, it's 10 p.m. Describe, if you would, the tone, temperature, and feel of where you are and what you've experienced today.
Well, it's been one hell of a day. We just haven't been able to keep up with all the rumors and reports. What started out as a morning of chaos and conflicting reports is now ending in a long night, I think, here in Misrata of celebrations. We've been hearing constant gunfire, lots of tires, burning rubber on the streets, lots of vehicles on the streets, and a lot of people basically in jubilation at the news that Gaddafi has been killed. We're expecting to see this happen all night. There have been fireworks and lots of celebratory gunfire, and I think a lot of relief. We spoke to a member of the transitional government who has confirmed that Gaddafi's body is still in a hospital here in Misrata, and that a group of medical experts, both Libyan and also third party outside of Libya, is how he described it, have inspected the body here and submitted a report to the transitional government.
Adrian, thank you for the reporting live from Libya. Tony, if you were to look at the fall of dictators, the American invasion of Iraq, and the celebration that followed that, only to watch the chaos of years of chaos that ensued. The glorious moment when Mubarak stepped down in Tahrir Square, only to watch the military effectively sort of freeze up the developments in Cairo. And now we are being shown a third, if you will, or it was really a fourth with Tunisia, a celebratory moment of a infamous and villainous dictator, a charge of emotion. What, if anything, can anybody do who's not in one of these countries to even influence it?
Well, I think we can influence it. We've chosen to influence this, Dylan. We're there. And as Secretary Clinton just said, there's a lot to be done. And let's be very clear here on what's coming next. These disparate groups are brought together on a concept. Well, now this concept has to become cohesion to move forward, to reestablish social order. And frankly, this country has a lot of resources. And you and I have debated this a little bit before. A lot of this has to do with oil, to be honest about it. With that said, there's a great potential to move forward here in a positive way. We can be helpful. I spoke with Ambassador Ali Ujale earlier today, the ambassador from Libya, and he told me something which was very interesting, and I think this is going to resonate with folks. He said, we have to teach our people how to vote. Think about that. These people have not had any democracy for over 42 years. And so this is something we can be helpful, and we should be helpful as we start looking at what is best for Libya going forward.
Ayman, first of all, it's a pleasure to meet you. It's nice to know that Richard Engel is going to have some help on the foreign beat. I'm sure he'll be happy to have that. Give us the context of the ripples. If you are in Damascus, if you are Assad, and you are watching this, and you know you've been watching the dominoes fall, what is going on in the minds of those who are vulnerable in the Middle East tonight?
Well, if I was in the mindset of President Bashar al-Assad, the first thing you don't want to happen is the conflict to be internationalized. One of the things that happened in both Libya and in Egypt is that when the conflict went internationally, the momentum completely shifts. And this is what's so troubling about what we're seeing in Syria. Right now, the regime is able to carry out these atrocities, these attacks, because the international community, although it has expressed concern, has not taken any concrete actions. Even the Arab League itself is still very divided in terms of coming out to blatantly condemn the Syrian regime. In Libya, it was not like that. What happened was the Arab League asked for international involvement. The government, the opposition government in Benghazi, asked for NATO involvement, and the U.S. and the Western countries were willing to. So what you saw in Libya was a convergence of interests that had never been seen before, particularly when it came to the use of Western military intervention on Arab soil, unlike Iraq, unlike Afghanistan.
And educate us a little bit, Tony, because there's a lot of PR around this, whether it's NATO forces, whether it is the use of Predator drones as opposed to troops on the ground. What, in a simple way, help us understand what is America's involvement in Libya today?
Well, as far as I can tell, the official story is, look, we didn't do this with boots on the ground. We did. We have some level of intelligence operations going on, but we did it with no loss of life. And frankly, the way we did it was probably the best way to do it without us being obvious about trying to help. Being helpful from behind is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm of the mind, as others have said, we should have been in there. Once we decided to use force, we should have gotten in there more quickly and done it more rapidly and done so Misrata and these other cities didn't suffer the consequences of having these huge street battles. With that said, there's still some dangling legal issues. I'm holding in my hand here the suit against Congress and President Obama relating to the fact that Congress feels they were not properly informed. They haven't been briefed on this for 6 weeks. So there's still issues about the fact that President Obama picked a fight here. He didn't have to pick. I think he would have gotten full support had he just said, I want to do this.
I guess what's still confusing, though, is what exactly did the U.S. do? In other words, we were told there was an airstrike today. Was that a U.S. Predator drone? Was that a French fighter pilot? Was that a British Royal Air Force? Who was that, and who is in charge of what is happening?
Well, you ask a great question, and as far as I can tell from the sources I've talked to, the convoy was stopped by one of our U.S. drones, which means in some way we took a direct action to essentially bring this to an end. Better or for worse, we took direct action from what I'm being told. So our military supported both refueling of the fighters you just mentioned, if they were there, which I think they were. We refueled them. We supported this whole sort of thing. We gave the backbone to the entire effort. For better or for worse, we were instrumental, I think, in many ways the right reasons, to move this thing forward to the near conclusion of the military actions we're now seeing.
What's in your head?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily describe the U.S. action as being the backbone of the operation, maybe perhaps today. But over the course of the 8 months, I think you really need to look at it from the perspective of the Libyans. And this is one of the criticisms that people sometimes have in the Arab world against the U.S., is that the policies are inconsistent. So what happens in Libya, what happens in Egypt, Tunisia, they've not been the same. The U.S. has been very reluctant to come out in some cases, in the case of Egypt, to support the people. So when people in Libya rose up against the regime, they looked at it as a very organic movement. It was Libyans leading the Libyan revolution. There's no doubt, and nobody can underestimate the importance of NATO tactically in making this happen. But to say that NATO was the key to the success of the operation is a little bit deceiving. At the end of the day,
because you're saying the spirit, the soul of the operation was the decision of the Libyan people to declare no mas.
Absolutely. You had the people on the ground who wanted to rise up. That was one. And why this is so important is because for 42 years and all across the Arab world, these regimes have existed based on fear. Now that that fear factor has been broken and the people are taking to the streets, the tactics are going to differ from country to country. But the principle and the spirit of what is happening is exclusively an Arab uprising. That's why people in the Arab world are for the first time feeling that this is a chance for the U.S. to stand on the side of the people and get it right, not stand on the side of the regimes.
This story clearly is going nowhere, and it's a pleasure to see you. I look forward to further conversation as it develops.
Thank you, Dylan.
Tony, same thing goes for you. How many countries we were saying earlier? 3 down, and
at least 18 to go.
18. It may be 100 to go. Who knows? With the government reforms
going to be different
in the offing in this world of ours, the next 20 years, it's going to be quite the sight to behold. Dramatic in some cases and subtle in others, I'm sure. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Ayman.
Thank you.
We have an action-packed show ahead on a busy news day. Coming up, the politics of this kill, what exactly happened in the last moments of Gaddafi's life, and who dealt the final blow, a live report from the White House, and then the rise and fall of Gaddafi, a look at 42 years of the mad dog dictator. And then putting it all in context, from Tripoli to Tiananmen Square, down to Zuccotti Park on Wall Street, exploring the power of protest with Rolling Stone's Matt Taibbi and one of the original student leaders at the Tiananmen Square protests. All ahead today.